types of boats that they would have had on the Miami-Erie Canal. Now, this section of the canal, from the Providence Dam all the way to Toledo, was opened in 1840, and it ran until 1913 when the state closed all the canals down in the state because of the flood that year. But this would have been a combination freight and passenger boat. And the cabins that you see are the size that they would have been on a boat like this. But this boat is 20 feet shorter than a normal canal boat would have been. Normal canal boats would have been 80 feet long and 14 feet wide. Our boat is 60 feet long and 14 feet wide. And the reason for that size is the locks were 90 feet long and 15 feet wide.
Which part of the boat did they cut out?
What's that?
Which part of the boat did they cut out?
I'm getting to that. It'll be right in the middle here. Everything, that extra 20 feet, most of it would have been right here in the middle, because that's where you would stack the cargo. And the center here, on this canal, most of the boats had their mule stable in the center of the boat, because the front of the boat, where the mule stable was on the boats on the Ohio Canal and the original Erie Canal, it's the least steady part of the boat. So you have mules going down this narrow gangplank, going up or down it, and if another boat was coming, even at 4 miles an hour, it would displace the water, and the front of the boat would rock a little bit, and the gangplank would rock, and if the mules weren't steady canal boat mules, they'd fall into the canal. Now they wouldn't drown, because it's only 4 feet deep. But a mule in the water is not something you want to have to encounter, because they don't like it, and they'll fight you every step of the way trying to get you out. So on this canal, folks are welcome to come on board. Just watch your step coming on. But if the mule stable was in the center, that's the steadiest part of the boat. So they didn't drop as many mules. They just, well, I'll get to that in a second. Usually, if they had a mule stable, it means that they were going some distance. A mule can go 8 to 10 hours without rest. You don't want to push that, because if the mule gets tired at 8.5 hours, it's just going to stop, and there's nothing you can do to keep it going. So what they would do is they'd have 2 crews. They'd have 2 steersmen, 2 bowsmen who would handle the ropes and other things on the boat. They'd have 1 cook and 1 captain. The cook was usually the captain's wife. And they'd have 2 mule drivers or hoagies and 2 sets of mules. So at the end of 6 hours, their shifts were usually 6 or 8 hours. At the end of a 6-hour shift, they'd pull over to the side. If there was a dock there, they'd pull up to the dock and tie up to the dock. If there wasn't a dock there, they'd just take stakes, put them in the ground, tie up with stakes, and then they'd put the gangplank out. Fresh mules would go up, and while they're tying up to the tow line, tired mules would come in, and they get a 6-hour rest, just like the other members of the crew do. Now, the passengers on a boat like this would have had, they would have paid 3 cents a mile, and for that 3 cents, they got 2 meals, they got breakfast and supper, and they got a place to sleep. And the toll, a half-cent a mile toll, was paid out of that 3 cents. The captain paid that out of the 3 cents. Now, the beds were not comfortable. This was, you know, this was basically like steerage was on the ocean-going vessels. You got something to eat, and you got a place to sleep. You didn't have to pay very much. It was basically just a mode of travel. And the beds that they had, they would stow them away during the daytime and put out chairs and things. But at night, they'd take those beds out, they'd hang them from the ceiling, and they'd drop down. There were 5 beds in a row. They were about 1.5 feet wide and 5 feet long. And then they'd anchor them to the floor so they didn't sway too much. Then you'd hang one here, here, and here, and then up there. Three rows up there. So you could fit 30 people in the cabin this size. It was not comfortable. In fact, I've seen many stories where some of the passengers sleeping in here would come out and sleep with the crew. The crew often slept in the summertime on the baggage and on the cargo, because they had cabins in the back. They didn't have any windows there, and so it was super stuffy in there. So usually they would try to sleep out here. They'd move around some cargo and find a place to sleep. And so sometimes the passengers would do that too. There's one story about a woman who was sleeping on one of the top bunks, and it was raining out, so they had all the shutters closed, and there was nowhere movement in her at all. And she was so uncomfortable that she got up and went on top of the boat to sleep, and it was raining. And she said that was preferable. And she said being wet all night was preferable to not being able to breathe. So it wasn't luxurious in here by any means. Now, the food that they had, that's a little bit different. That wasn't bad unless you had a bad cook. There's one story about a canal boatman was talking about one time. He sat down to eat, and the cook served him soup, and he started eating it, and the cook was just standing over him with a big smile, and she said, "How do you like the soup today?" He said, "Man, this is the finest fresh water I've ever tasted." She dumped the rest of the soup on him. So some cooks are good, some cooks are not. In fact, there were some cooks that were so good. In the canal, it was kind of like a small village, 249-mile-long village. Mm-hmm. Because people along the canal, they knew the boats, they knew the captains, they knew the workers, and they knew where a good cook was on a boat. And there was one fellow who was saying that it wasn't uncommon if a boat had a really good cook. You'd be going down the canal, and around supper time, if you came to a low bridge, there would be a line of people up on the bridge. And when the boat passed under them, they would jump down on the top of the boat, they'd come down, they'd give the captain 3 cents, and go right to the cook to get their supper. And they'd eat supper on the boat, and then they'd leave. And, so, yeah, a good cook was usually worth, worth a little extra money to the boss, the captain. But as far as what they ate for breakfast, probably Johnny cakes, which are cornmeal pancakes, or regular pancakes. They'd have eggs. Usually, if they had meat, they had some kind of cured ham, because cured ham they could keep on the boat. They didn't need refrigeration. And so they'd have something like that for breakfast, so that's not a bad breakfast. And biscuits, of course. And for supper, they probably have biscuits again. They'd have some kind of boiled meat and vegetables. Vegetables were very easy to come by on the canal, because you could stop, you could buy it from a farmer along the way. Sometimes the farmers would have somebody on the low bridge with their produce, and they would do business right off the bridge. There was one fellow, one farmer, sometimes you just put the money in the bucket and send it back up onto the bridge. But this one farmer, he put a potato in the bucket, a big potato, and he dropped the bucket down, and they take the food out of there, and instead of putting the money back in the bucket, they would stuff the money into the potato, and then throw the potato to the farmer on the bank. So, let's see. But yeah, you could get the vegetables maybe at a general store, because a lot of the lots had general stores that were close by, right attached basically to the lot. And sometimes the lockmaster himself would sell you vegetables, because along with their compensation, they were given a small house right at the lock and 1 acre of land somewhat close to the lock. In the case of this lock, the acre of land was right across the road where that trunking line is. And in our case, they had an orchard, an apple orchard over there. So he would pick the apples, he would sell them to the crews going by, to the boats going by, and make some extra money. And that's why they gave him that land. But a lot of those lock masters would grow vegetables. And so they would sell those vegetables to the crews. And if you wanted a snack, well, it wasn't uncommon to be going along in the canal and see a whole bunch of berry bushes out there. And somebody would take a hat or a bucket or something, and they'd go out there and they'd pick berries. Now, the boat's only going 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it's not like the boat's going to be a mile away from you if you stop to get some berries. You know, it's well within walking distance to get back. And sometimes they fish. They fish right from the canal, right from the canal boat. They sit up on top, go line in the water. And it was especially good to do that in a place like this, along this branch of the canal from Toledo to the Pines, because we're right over by the river. And the river, all the way from the Pines, provided the water for the canal. So if whatever fish were in the river would end up in the canal, so you could easily fish there. And sometimes they'd send the kids over to the river if they're real close to it, like we are here. They'd send the kids over to the river to find snapping turtles. Because that was a delicacy. They loved their snapping turtles. So, and also bean soup. Bean soup is a very, I would call it a canal boat staple, because almost every meal, or everybody that talked about meals on a canal boat would talk about bean soup. And in fact, I did a program last year, 2019, on the boat, of cooking on a canal boat. And I made a recipe of bean soup that came from the Ohio Canal that had been used there since the mid-1850s. It was passed down through the family. And so I made that recipe of bean soup. Everybody seemed to like it. But anyway, food generally wasn't a problem on the canal boat. Sleeping was, but
Yeah.
not so much food. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Was there below deck storage?
Yes. Yep. They would have had a cargo hold below deck.
So how big is that?
How big was the cargo hold?
Yeah, how deep?
It would have been about 3 feet deep. About 3 feet deep, and probably go the full, 30 feet or whatever it is.
So,
in the center of the boat.
so where would the hatch be for it?
What's that?
Where would the hatch be?
Hatches would be right over in here. They probably have 3 of them at least, right along here for easy on and off. Thanks for coming. But yeah, they would stow cargo down there, like if they were taking stone from one of the local quarries, they put that in there. Sometimes just corn or wheat or some other grain.
How would you move the stone once you got it underneath?
Shovels,
You don't mean blocks, you mean gravel.
gravel.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, if they were traveling, taking blocks of stone, they wouldn't have taken a boat like this. They would have taken one of the freight boats, which had a cabin in back, and then the rest of it was all flat. That's the kind of boat that they would take those limestone blocks on. But yeah, gravel from the quarries, they would ship that on a boat like this. Coal if they could. This wasn't a coal producing area, so coal wasn't something that they took a lot of, but they would have transported it anyway, because people needed coal. Railroads needed coal, and they usually, in the early days, they got them from canal boats.
Okay.
folks would like, you go up on the till deck and see how we steer the boat.